I said at the beginning of the show that this was a predictions program, and I am certainly going to deliver on my promise. Now, we are going to move from some high school recruitment commitment predictions to some bold predictions for the 2025 season. We're about 2.5 months or so until the season is about to begin. We got a long way to go and a lot of things can happen, but I am ready to put it all out on the line. I want to hear your bold predictions in the comments below on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, if you're listening on podcast, make sure you at me on Twitter at Ted on the Ducks. Email that showoutwest@gmail.com. However you want to get in touch with me, I want to hear all of your bold predictions. I love to hear it. I love to hear it this time of year where we've still got a ways to go until we kick this season off. So without further ado, let's put it up there on the screen for those of you on YouTube, and let's get into it for all of you podcast listeners as well. Now, I am going to talk a lot about the between the lines predictions about like the football season and football team, but I want to start with a bold recruiting prediction. Dan Lanning is known as the Flipmaster. Dan Lanning always seems to finish extremely strong in the month of December during the early signing period. Last cycle, it was Naeem Offord, flipping the number one player in the state of Alabama, a top defensive back. Of course, Ohio State was in there. Auburn was also involved as well, but he ended up donning the green and yellow O on signing day. My first bold prediction, I think he's going to pull another one, and I think it's going to be another top defensive player. The top edge rusher in the country, one of the top overall players in this cycle, Zion Ely, I believe is going to flip to Oregon by the time we get close to signing day. Now, let me break this one down. Oregon was the favorite for Zion Ely for a very long time before he committed to Maryland, before that recruitment was shut down. You have to imagine there was a good amount of cash that was involved in that type of decision for him, but now what have we seen recruiting-wise from some of these DMV and these local Maryland players? Maryland was initially someone for Emmanuel Iheanacho. They've dropped out of the race. Jaira Edwards, another great player from that area. Certainly doesn't look like the Terps are going to land him. Now it kind of looks like Zion Ely is on a little bit of an island. And like he is an elite pass rusher. He is an elite football player that can make a difference at high-level programs fairly early in his career. Now, let's talk about Maryland for just a minute. Last year was a bad season. They won only one Big Ten game, beating the USC Trojans in the middle of the season in an absolutely crazy game. This season, I do not think that they are going to be a good team. I don't think that they're going to be an improved football team. Let me put my Big Ten Ted hat here for just a minute. I think Maryland's going to be one of the bottom feeders in the conference. I really believe that. Billy Edwards transferred out. They got UCLA's backup from last year is now their starting quarterback. They got that true freshman in Malik Washington. There was some decent players that transferred out of this program. I think ever since Talia Tagovailoa has left College Park, Maryland, it's been clear that Mike Locksley has this program in a downward trajectory. You need to be able to sell hope. You need to be able to sell optimism. If Maryland has another a 3-9 season or another 4-8 season, it's really hard to keep on convincing people to come back in to the stadium, to be able to convince people to spend this type of money in relation to the Maryland program, whether it's in recruiting or transfer portal or whatever else. If Mike Locksley indeed gets fired and they decide to go in another direction, I believe that door is going to open for Zion Ely once again. And when that door is open, I think Dan Lanning is going to be the first one there. I honestly believe that. They were, like I said before, they were a big-time player early on in his recruitment. I think that is going to be the big signing day flip. I think my bold prediction is you're going to see Zion Ely, you're going to see Richard Wesley, you're going to see a fantastic edge rusher tandem sign on the dotted line in the early signing period for the Oregon Ducks in December. All right, now let's get to some on the field bold predictions. The Ducks will not have a 1,000-yard rusher in the regular season. In the regular season is a very key distinction here. Now, Oregon has been built on 1,000-yard rushers, having 1,000-yard ball carriers in 17 of the past 20 seasons. Ted, how could they not have a 1,000-yard rusher? Let me break it down for you. I view Mekhi Hughes transferring in. Now, this is maybe not complete apples to oranges, and just because something happened in the past doesn't at another university doesn't mean that it's going to happen here at Oregon. But I think I see some similarities in this. I kind of see Mekhi Hughes in the same vein as Quinshon Judkins, who transferred over to Ohio State last year. Quinshon Judkins, his freshman year, his sophomore year, like early in his career, he put up, I think it was like combined for like 2,500 yards in 2 seasons at Ole Miss. He transfers over to Ohio State. I'm sure money had something to do with that, but he transfers over to Ohio State to be a part of a championship team, to be a part of a winner. I think Mekhi Hughes is in the same boat. He's averaged right around 1,400 yards per season in those 2 seasons over at Tulane. But I believe that this Oregon running back room is as deep as we've seen in a very long time. I'm really excited about Noah Whittington. I am thrilled about Noah Whittington. Last year, he was coming off of an injury, but man, in that second half of the season, when he really got going, I think he really showed what he can do. I looked at Noah Whittington in the spring game. Now, I know spring game, it's just a couple of reps. It is what it is. Spring practice was closed off to the media, so we don't have as much access. We don't have as many data points to really go off of. But man, I saw some pop. I saw some pop and some explosiveness in his step in the couple of reps and the couple of carries that he got during that spring game. I think Noah Whittington is going to have the best season that he's had as an Oregon Duck. Go back to 2022, 779 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think we could see Noah Whittington in that like 800, 820, maybe even upwards of like 840 or 850 yards on the ground. Rashad Samples said it in the spring. He wants to get as many people involved. He wants to call the NCAA. He wants to say, hey, we want to play with 2 footballs. And that really told me, I think they're going to try to utilize everything in this room. We've heard a lot of really good things about Dink Riggs. Now, I do not believe Dink Riggs this season is going to rush for 700 or 800, 900 yards. But I could very well see a breakdown where Mekhi Hughes is the leading rusher, but Will Whittington is definitely that 1B back where Mekhi rushes like in the mid 900-yard range. Mekhi Hughes is in that, lower to mid 800-yard range. And then I think you could see Dink Riggs maybe in that like 300 to 400-yard range. And then you factor in some carries for Jade Lamar, maybe some short yardage carries for Jay Harris, certainly in there as well. I think that this is going to be as deep of a run game as we have seen. And that's a good thing. Just because Oregon might not have a 1,000-yard rusher doesn't automatically mean it's a bad thing. We're going to see a more guys, I think, get more carries within this run game this season. Let's move on to the next one, and it kind of has to do with the run game. Let's talk about the offensive line. Back-to-back years, they've won the Joe Moore Award. Make it 3. Or that they haven't won the Joe Moore Award. They've been a finalist. I should correct myself. They've been a finalist for the Joe Moore Award 3 in a row. I think Oregon once again is going to be a finalist for a Joe Moore Award. I love these transfers. I'm really starting to warm up to these transfers that Oregon brought in this past season. I've got a lot of confidence in the middle of the offensive line with Iapani Lalaolu, also known as Pancho and Pranon in the middle. Like Pranon, if he would have went out to the NFL draft, he might have been like a mid-round pick, a 4th or a 5th round pick. I got a lot of confidence that those 2 guys in the middle are going to work out really well. I think Isaiah World can be a next-level pass blocker. I think Alex Harkey is as good of a run blocker as you're going to see at the tackle position. I think because of the experience that these guys have, now not necessarily the experience together, but because of the experience that they have, I think that's going to pay off. I don't think you're going to see as much shuffling. I don't think you're going to see as much shifting. I think that this is a team that's going to protect Dante Moore really well. And I think like the pieces around them, like, the Joe Moore Award is usually awarded to teams that have good offensive production, right? Because if an offensive line is protecting the passer, it usually means that the quarterback is throwing the football and throwing for a lot of yards down the field. If the running backs are going for a lot of yards, it usually means that the offensive line is doing a pretty good job in run blocking. I think that this offensive line is going to be awarded as a finalist, and maybe, just maybe, they might win the whole damn thing this season. Alik Terry raved about the size of these offensive line transfers during the spring. I think they're going to be able to bully some teams around. I think they're going to be one of the better offensive lines out there. Now, that might not seem ultra bold. I think out of all of these, that might be the least bold. Let's go on to the next one. Dan Lanning will win Big Ten Head Coach of the Year. Now, we've seen what Dan Lanning can do with experienced transfers. We've seen what Dan Lanning can do with maybe more experienced players. But I think what's going to stand out to Dan Lanning's peers this year, and everybody's talking about it nationally, everybody's saying, well, you know, they don't have that ultra experienced quarterback. They don't have a Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix, two of the most experienced quarterbacks in college football history. They don't have that. They don't have Josh Connerly at tackle. They don't have this guy, and they don't have that guy. They're really leaning on these Dan Lanning recruiting classes. And I think Dan and this entire coaching staff is going to do a really great job. And they're going to show, I think, how strong of a coaching staff they are. Kenyon Barner recently talked about this on the Ducks of a Feather podcast, is this year might be more about the coaches than it is about the players, because this is really the vision in recruiting that has been sold to really get to this point, to really get these players on the field. And if Dan Lanning is able to really keep that standard up, go like 11-1 this season, I think he's going to be looked very favorable in this Big Ten head coach voting. I know it usually goes to guys that come out of nowhere. David Braun won it a couple of years ago. Of course, Kurt Cignetti won it last year. It's usually like that worst to first type of award, but I kind of look around the Big Ten. I don't know if I necessarily see a team that's in a favorable position to do that. So I think they're going to give it to somebody that's been a proven head coach, hasn't won Big Ten Head Coach of the Year, but that's kind of working with maybe a little bit less, even though you and I know the roster is pretty damn talented. But nationally, they might view it as working with a lot of young players, working with a little bit less, and still achieving a similar result. Dan, the man, might finally get his recognition when all is said and done. Last thing I'm going to be talking about is the defense. The defense will have 6, count them 6, all Big Ten players. Now, when I talk about all Big Ten, first team, second team, third team, I'm not talking about honorable mention. To put it into context, last year they had 4 all Big Ten players. Now, 3 of them were on the defensive line. And I believe that we could see 3 defensive line all Big Ten players once again. Now, you had Theron Johnson, who transferred in from Northwestern, who is also all Big Ten last season. But when I really start to break down the defense, Mateo Uwayangalele, he was an all Big Ten player last year. Bryce Betcher was an all Big Ten player last year. So you're already starting with 2. Dylan Thieneman, now he was honorable mention last year when he had 6 interceptions during his freshman year. He was all Big Ten. So you have 3 guys already right off the bat that have been all Big Ten. If you want to throw out Theron Johnson as well, that's 4 right there. But I think you're going to see Amari Washington really step up into an all Big Ten type of level. I think that he's going to be fantastic. I think that this is really going to be a year where he's going to step up and really show why he was that next guy behind Derek Harmon, behind Jamari Caldwell last year, and played as much in the rotation as much as he did. I think Bear Alexander, we talked about it on the last show. What if Bear Alexander plays at an all Big Ten level? I think that he's got the talent to play at an all Big Ten level. I think that, and I've said this before, I think this defensive line is as good as there is. And I think that the people are going to see how good this group is, and you could once again see 3, for the second consecutive year, 3 Oregon defensive linemen awarded with all conference. I talked about Betcher. I talked about Thieneman. Now you got to find one more. Watch out. Not saying he'll win first or second team, but he could slide into that third team. Watch out for corner Ife Obadegwu. I know there's some other guys that could certainly step up at other positions, and I think it would be a defensive back and be in that role. But, man, I think Ife is a guy that can really stand out. And if some of the rumblings in the spring are correct, a lot of people see him as the top corner on this roster. I think he's going to be recognized as one of the top defensive backs in the Big Ten, and that gets us to 6 all Big Ten players. That's what I got. I'm putting it all out on the line. Once again, let's hear your bold predictions in the comments below.